My name's Jeremy Wade. For 25 years, I've chased dangerous fish up some of the wildest rivers on the planet, tracking down the facts that lie behind legends. I'm fascinated by the real-life monsters that sometimes eat us and which feed our nightmares. But as a biologist, I want to know the truth. Now I'm back on the hunt, lured by the riddle of an 8-foot flesh-eater that's said to devour humans. If I'm right, this alleged killer is born deep in the ocean, yet transforms itself into a freshwater predator. The fish I'm after has a grip like a vice, and it stands accused of terrifying attacks. Imagine a landmass cut off from the rest of the world for 80 million years. A wilderness of impenetrable forests and lakes almost twice as deep as Loch Ness. Now suppose that in the cold, dark waters of this lost world lurks a predator big enough to kill a man. This was virtually the last place on Earth to be discovered. When the Maori came here barely 800 years ago, there was one animal they revered above all others. I've always thought of New Zealand as a totally safe place to get in the water, but just recently, 2 separate reports have caught my eye and made me think again. One incident concerns a young man, Clint Haynes, who was out on a remote lake in New Zealand's South Island. According to this newspaper report, Haynes had gone out to recover a friend's boat propeller from the bottom of the lake. He knew the lake well, or at least he thought he did. At about 100 feet down, something massive suddenly swam towards him. And within seconds, there were more of them. He says up to about 80 pounds in size. In the pitch black, one of these creatures sank its jaws into one of Clint's fins and started to drag him down. Panicking, he dropped his flashlight and swam for his life. Clint's wife, Bev, remembers how this aggressive pack actually pursued him to the surface, where Clint was screaming to get out. He'd come up so fast from deep water that he collapsed with the bends. Haynes survived the attack, but was plagued by nightmares. For Ian Sutherland, another diver working in northern New Zealand, a similar encounter proved to be more violent. The creature in this case was already a local legend. Its head was reportedly a foot across. Without warning, it rammed Ian in the chest with enough force to crack one of his ribs. By all accounts, the animals that grabbed and thumped these 2 divers were supersized eels. Now, I've heard about monstrous sea-dwelling eels. Some, like this European conger, can grow to 10 feet long. And the giant moray is a seriously large animal, certainly big enough to attack humans. One well-known account here of a diver getting his thumb ripped off and eaten. But the idea that a freshwater eel could ever be huge or dangerous comes as a real surprise. New Zealand, in fact, has 3 kinds of freshwater eel. The speckled eel grows to around 6 feet long, but it's off my suspect list because it doesn't live in the lake where Haynes was attacked. At little more than 4 feet long, the short-fin eel is simply too small to fit the bill. The most likely perpetrator is the longfin, an eel that's unique to New Zealand and which is known to grow to at least 6 feet. Modern records have this snake-like fish growing to around 55 pounds, but there are older anecdotal reports of much larger specimens. In the 19th century, the naturalist Thomas Potts mentions a 90-pounder landed from a place called Stonyhurst. And there's even a story of a 130-pound eel taken from a deep lake in New Zealand's South Island. Such an eel, if it ever existed, must have looked like an underwater python. These accounts are certainly intriguing, but buried in the archives of London's Maritime Museum is an even more tantalising description of a creature that's not only a monster, but also a man-eater. Some 240 years ago, British explorer James Cook painstakingly mapped the coastline of New Zealand. As he did so, he gathered information from the Maori inhabitants about native wildlife. And in one of his many journals, he alludes very specifically to a man-eating monster. Following a conversation with a local chief, Cook writes, and I quote, "We had another piece of information, importing that there are here snakes and lizards of an enormous size, 8 feet long and equal to a man's body in circumference. They sometimes seize and devour men." According to Cook, the chief actually drew a picture of one of these creatures to show what he meant. But the obvious conclusion that this beast must be a python or possibly some kind of huge lizard simply can't be right. What makes this account so intriguing and also so problematic is that there are no snakes or any large reptiles in New Zealand, and there never have been. As I head for New Zealand, my prime suspect for Captain Cook's devourer of men is not a snake, but a fish that looks like a snake. It's a theory that seems more plausible when you consider Maori folklore. Maori legends are full of tales about predatory beasts called taniwha. Now, these potentially very dangerous creatures are quite slippery customers, and sometimes they take the form of a giant eel. I'm starting my search for a giant longfin at a place called Mangawhitakau, near Waitomo, on New Zealand's North Island. Supposedly, there are eels that have lived in this cave for at least 30 years and have never seen daylight. More disconcertingly, the Maori name for this underworld means bad place to cross the river. Eels are at the heart of Maori culture. Legend has it that they all sprang from a single huge ancestor. The story goes that there was a drought up in heaven and a giant eel was sent down to earth to try and find water for the gods. But while it was here, it tried to seduce the wife of Maui, who was the most powerful of the Maori gods. And enraged, Maui fought with the giant eel and hacked it in two. And the severed head gave rise to all the seawater eels, and the tail, so the story goes, gave rise to all the freshwater eels. Even with a flashlight and a headlamp, I'm straining to see more than a few feet. I've no idea what might be lurking here, but to tempt something out of the shadows, I decide to dip a piece of meat into the water. Straight away, an eel emerges. This one isn't huge, but it is surprisingly bold. Despite living in pitch black, it has absolutely no fear of the light, or of me. It's on a single-minded search for flesh. Yet this carnivorous instinct doesn't, on its own, make the longfin a killer. I want to find out if they can get big enough and aggressive enough to be seriously dangerous to people. Could they ever be, in the words of Cook, devourers of men? To get a proper look at what makes the longfin eel New Zealand's top freshwater predator, I first have to catch one. When it comes to bait, anything goes. Fresh roadkill could be worth a try. Eels tend to be more active at night, relying on smell rather than sight to find food. I use a concoction of guts and offal to draw them in. Eels have a phenomenal ability to sense blood. My two rods are each equipped with an electronic alarm, primed to go off if something makes a grab for the bait. I don't have to wait long. If there's flesh on offer, it seems these animals are into it like starved piranhas. Even with the small one, I have to take special care, because these fish have poisonous blood. The serum contains a neurotoxin that can kill dogs. And just a splash into my eye or a cut as I try to unhook it could land me in serious trouble. Doesn't feel like a normal fish at all. Very, very smooth skin. They do actually have scales, but they're embedded under a layer of skin. Not very big eyes. They don't really use their eyes to hunt, but they do use smell. And you can see what looks like a pair of horns on the front of the head there. In fact, these structures are tubes that funnel water into enlarged nasal chambers. The eel's sense of smell is even more sensitive than that of a great white shark. Having zeroed in, an eel grabs its prey with powerful jaws that bristle with hundreds of teeth. Well, you can see why people consider these to be very similar to snakes, even though they are technically fish. There are plenty of eels here, but nothing over 3 feet long. Leaving legends aside, I wonder if science can shed any light on the question of size. Just how big, in theory, could this animal grow? Inside the skull of a dead eel may seem like a strange place to look for an answer. But Dr. Don Jellyman is the world authority in these animals, and he knows exactly what he's after.
So this is the brain, the spinal cord, and this little otolith sits in a small sac just in the back here, and it's part of the balancing system. So that's what we're after, Jeremy. That little bone there holds the key to a lot of the life history of the eel, its age, its growth rate.
Once magnified, this tiny ear bone reveals the growth history of the fish. So is that the same sort of principle as counting the rings on a tree, something like that?
It is.
Yeah.
It's exactly the same.
A 2 to 3 foot eel can be 30 years old. But amazingly, this is just a youngster. What's the oldest they might be, do you think? Any conjectures?
Well, the oldest that I've aged is 105 years old. And from that lake, the average age at which the females migrated was 93 years. It's extraordinary, isn't it?
One thing I've been thinking about is this mention in Captain Cook's journals about he was told about something that was snake-like and 8 feet long. Would one of these be capable of growing to 8 feet, do you think, in ideal conditions?
Yes, it's quite likely in the wild that they would have grown to a very, very large size like that.
Wow,
so I wouldn't dismiss that.
So that could be a reliable report. And at that length, how much is that going to weigh, roughly?
You're well over 100 pounds at that stage.
Right.
Yeah.
Gosh.
Yes, that's a big fish.
Yeah.
It's a seriously big fish.
So that Captain Cook report, it could have been one of these?
It could well have been. It might be of interest just to have a look inside it. So we'll just do a run up through here. So, oh, there is something in here.
That's the stomach, is it?
That's the stomach there.
That's quite full, isn't it?
Let's take a peek. I'm rather interested to know what this has got in it.
With toxic blood oozing out of the eel's body, I'm careful to wash my hands. Is that another eel?
It's another eel, yes.
Ooh.
It's well digested.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they can be quite cannibalistic. They're just well adapted to taking those opportunities as they arise. If there's tucker there, they're into it. Yeah.
My photo fit of Captain Cook's monster is starting to take shape. It's a fish with real nerve, guided by the nose of a bloodhound, and armed with hundreds of close-packed teeth. It can live for more than a century, and potentially at least grow to 8 feet long. It also happens to have toxic blood and a taste for its own kind. But is it truly dangerous? To find out, I've booked myself onto a popular radio chat show.
Radio Southland's 96.4 FM. I'm Matt Rutherford, talking with well-known angler Jeremy Wade, who's really interested in hearing your stories about long-fin eels. So give us a call on 21888964.
I'm looking for evidence of aggression, and the lines are soon buzzing.
An eel came and latched onto the deer carcass, and we had a wrestling match for that.
Trying to measure her, she latched onto my finger. When I looked down, quite a surprise. Yeah, quite a large black eel.
It would have to have been, 2 metres and as round as a man's
The
thigh.
end of my finger ended being stripped back to the bone.
There are some monsters, there's no question of that.
I was prepared for tales of ducklings swallowed whole, but it seems that some eels strike at much larger prey.
Yeah, I took my dog Sam down to the river and we were playing with a ball. I was throwing it and he was bringing it back to me, and I threw it this one time and I heard him go in for it. I could hear something going on, but I couldn't see him. He just disappeared under the water.
I'm still taking note when a man calls in to tell me about some sheep that were eaten alive.
What was happening, the sheep were falling into the river and turning around and trying to get back out again. But before they could get out, these eels were attacking them from behind and going in the back passage of the sheep. Until they were pulling the intestines out and going right inside the animal and getting right up to the liver and that before it actually ceased to live.
Then, to top it all, the story of a man who went skinny dipping.
This rather large eel come up and grabbed them in a very peculiar sort of a place.
Right, I think I get your drift there, possibly. Yeah.
Yes, and it ended up putting him in hospital.
So this chap who was hospitalised, how can I put this delicately, was he missing anything when he got out of hospital, or was he just
I
patched
think he was
out?
all right when he got out of hospital, but he might have been cross-eyed for a while. So.
Okay.
My respect for these longfins is growing by the minute, so I'll definitely take care when I'm out there trying to get my own hands-on experience.
And mate, beware. Just be careful. Eel wrestling is not a good sport for tourists.
Okay, thanks for the warning.
Stick to bungee jumping.
Going on the radio has really helped me to tap into local knowledge and very quickly get an accurate sense of what this predator is capable of. But since coming here, I've also tracked down an old newspaper report that describes a terrifying assault on a young girl. This appears to be a very clear example of an eel deliberately trying to kill a human. In 1971, 8-year-old Carol Davis wandered into a stream on her father's property. For several days previously, large eels had been attacking Mr. Davis's ducks. Then, for reasons that aren't clear, one of them decided to have a go at Carol. The idea that an eel could drag a girl into deep water is entirely possible. This is a fish that can actually swim backwards with real power. Carol's horror story has really concentrated my mind. Not only was she attacked in shallow water, her ordeal also happened in broad daylight. It makes me wonder what would happen to me under similar conditions. It's not just dark underground caves where you find eels lurking. I'm in a wildlife park where I know there are half a dozen big longfins. I'm not yet ready to try this out in the wild, where if things went wrong, I'd be miles from any help. Nonetheless, there's no such thing as a tame eel, and I've already heard enough to put me on edge. Their mouths are lined with hundreds of backward-pointing teeth, and the ones in here are certainly big enough to grab an ankle or a hand. I'm treading into the roots here. The trouble is they're going to be lurking right in there. I don't want to get my toes nipped. After a couple of nervy encounters, I decide to push my luck. I've actually got one right here. There we go. Whoa! Short and dramatic. It's my first real contact with one of these big longfin eels. Clearly, well-fed eels like these just aren't aggressive. But I'm not fooling myself, they'll be so placid in the wild. Finding the big one is like looking for a needle in a haystack. But I've come here during the annual eel migration, when thousands of breeding adults are heading downriver. Like all freshwater eels, these ancient fish begin and end their lives at sea, and this is where I'm hoping to intercept them. At Lake Ellesmere, in New Zealand's South Island, the eels run into a dead end. To reach the ocean, they have to leave the lake and crawl over a narrow spit of land. In the fading light, eel fishermen Graham and George are also waiting for the approaching swarm. They've cut a shallow trench at the end of the lake, just a few hundred yards from the sea. As the eels search for a way through, they'll run into this blind alley. It's a time-honoured strategy used by the Maori, and it seems to work. Before long, a writhing mass of eels is piling up under our feet. There's no danger here. The only thing on the minds of these eels is reaching salt water. Most of our catch is destined for the smoke rack or the cooking pot. But a different fate awaits any large eels.
Slippery customers. Very sizable one here. That one's actually too big to get one hand around. How'd you grab one of those?
Probably be too big to grab.
Right. So that's a big old longfin, isn't it?
That certainly is.
That's a good 4 foot long, that, isn't it?
20 pound. They got about 6 million eggs.
Right.
Yeah, in each one.
What we're going to do with this one is put it in the sack, and this one's actually going to go into the sea to complete its journey.
The fishermen tell me there were once countless thousands of eels pouring out of the rivers, some of them over 6 feet long. Nothing of this size has turned up in recent years, yet the more I get to know these fish, the more they impress me. Loaded with several million eggs, each of these females is about to embark on an epic 6-month voyage into the Pacific.
I reckon she can smell the sea, just yards to go.
The eels must now journey more than 3,000 miles to reach their spawning ground. Its precise location and how they manage to find it are still unanswered questions.
From here on, it's a creature of mystery.
According to the World Authority on these animals, an 8-foot-long monster is a real possibility. So when I hear about an aquarium with a 7-foot eel, I'm eager to take a look for myself.
I'm normally quite confident getting in with fish, but there is something a little bit spooky about these characters, and they're actually nudging me already.
I want to catch and measure the biggest eel I can find in this tank.
Maybe the thing about black neoprene, maybe, I don't know, maybe they think I'm a funny kind of eel. I think I feel slightly more comfortable with something covering my feet. Just putting my fins on, not because I need them for propulsion, but some of these fish are showing an unhealthy interest in my toes.
I swim down to take a look around, but the tank is full of dark hidey holes, and there must be at least 30 sizable eels down here. I aim for the largest one I can see. Like other captive eels that are fed regularly, this one is remarkably unaggressive.
Right. I'll just get the scales, get the weight first. Okay. I make that 37.5. Oh, it's suddenly waking up.
This is the heaviest longfin I've encountered so far, but how does it measure up?
That's a 5 foot tape measure, and that's pretty well exactly 5 foot. I might just do the girth quickly as well, if I can get this underneath without disturbing it too much. And that's nearly an 18-inch girth, which is about the size of my thigh, something like that, or not far short. Right. That's not actually the biggest one down there. I reckon there's bigger ones hiding in the holes around the sides and even in this structure in the middle. Even in a small tank like this, the biggest fish is something of a mystery. So in terms of in the wild, you know, who knows what's out there.
In New Zealand's South Island, I leave the beaten track and push into the mountains. Some of the biggest eels mentioned in historical records were caught from deep lakes in the interior. And this is where I'm focusing my search for a monster. On Lake Manapuri, in what feels like the middle of nowhere, I first join Evan Brunton, a man who tracks and catches eels for a living. There are parts of this lake that plunge to more than 1/4 mile deep. Room enough for a monster to hide in, even today.
So we've actually got over 1,500 feet in the middle. I mean, that's way deeper than Loch Ness.
1,500 feet's nothing for an eel.
Yeah.
The other night we were tracking eels 2 o'clock in the morning, and one eel was travelling right on the surface, and the other eel was travelling at 150 metres, which is 600 feet. An eel could quite happily live at the bottom of this lake.
And do you think there are still big ones around?
Yes, there is a few big ones from time to time. They just seem to turn up out of the blue.
Evan calculates that some of the eels in this lake are over 80 years old.
When you think about it, some of these eels were 20 years old at the outbreak of the Second World War.
Have you heard any stories of aggressive or dangerous eels in your time?
Oh yes. A couple of people went missing in the hidden lakes of Tiana, supposedly taken by monstrous eels. You've only got to see the strength in them when they bite. It'd be very, very hard for some people to actually get up again, especially if there was more than one of them. People can fall over and knock themselves out, can't they?
At a secluded bay, we pull over to see if anything large has turned up in Evan's nets. Even here, the chances of finding a giant eel are slim. But the 16-pounder that Evan hauls out is still an impressive animal.
So powerful. Yeah. You can imagine that at 30 pound, could drag someone away. So there's some eels up in the Waikato that have been up to 100 pound.
And they've been caught and reliably weighed?
Yes, they have.
Oh, gosh.
Evan's accounts of monstrous 100-pound eels have got me itching to fish. But first, there's a niggling question at the back of my mind. I can well believe that a massive eel could seize someone and drag them under. But with teeth designed to grip rather than cut, I'm sceptical about whether it could actually dismember and devour a person. If Captain Cook's man-eater really is a huge longfin, then this animal must have some other way to rip you apart. To see how, I'm laying on a buffet. A hunter has provided me with a deer carcass, and I've brought along a high-tech box of tricks. Underwater cameras placed around the bait will give me separate views of the tail, throat and stomach. If any eels show up to feed, I'll be able to see how they deal with something that's too large to swallow whole.
The eels I've seen got very powerful bodies and a very strong grip, but how one of these animals, even if it was the 8-foot size mentioned in Captain Cook's journal, how that could devour a person is still not immediately obvious.
With my surveillance cameras switched on, I retreat to a makeshift control room. The stage is set. All I can do now is sit and wait. For nearly 2 hours, nothing shows up. If eels are sensitive to electricity, then it could be that my cameras are spooking them. Or perhaps they're just biding their time until dark. Suddenly, they appear out of nowhere, and like a pack of wolves, they start to attack the carcass. Straining to see in the pitch black, I catch my first glimpse of how these predators could rip you to shreds.
There we go. It's getting in there. Yep, it's latching on. It's actually spinning. It's spinning around.
These eels are feeding like crocodiles, gripping the victim firmly, then spinning violently to twist off chunks of flesh.
It actually reminds me of this story that I've heard. It's one of those stories that I haven't been able to pin down where it happened to, but a few people have told me this, and it's somebody who was driving, supposedly had a few to drink.
It's said that the man swerved out of control and crashed into a lake. Unconscious and bleeding, he would have been, quite literally, a sitting target for marauding eels. I've now seen with my own eyes how a pack of longfins could make a real mess of someone, given half a chance. I've also tracked down credible stories of massive eels living in New Zealand's remote backwaters. Yet just when I'm ready to try and catch one of these slippery monsters, I run into an unexpected problem. In wilderness areas like this, fishing for eels with hooks is now strictly forbidden. I've no choice but to give up my usual methods and start from scratch. Eel fisherman Vic Thompson is my teacher.
I'm going to make a bob for you. Simply you find a bit of steak like that, or a bit of any red meat, cut it into a slim slice. And I've got a bit of mackerel fish here, which adds a bit of flavour.
Yep.
You have a bit of wool, just ordinary darning wool needle, thread through like that to start with. Pull it right through, and then you just wind this around like that.
Yep.
After you've done the first layer like that, you've got to put a loop on here to attach it to your line.
The theory is simple. When the eel bites, its teeth get tangled in the wool. I must then drag it ashore before it shakes itself free.
So there you've got your loop on your bob. Good,
nice.
Good bite size for an eel.
So I guess the angler doesn't have the hook. The eel actually has the hook in this situation, doesn't it? The eel has lots of hooks in its mouth, so they hook onto the wool. Very low tech, but very, very effective by the sound of it.
Very effective.
It all sounds straightforward, but as I head for a deserted spot on a deep water lake, I'm not so sure. The method I've just learnt is a traditional Maori technique known as toi, or bobbing. One clear benefit, at least, is that with no hooks involved, there's little danger of spilling the eel's toxic blood. Assuming I can catch one. Having cast my very first hookless bait, I wait for a bite. If anywhere has super-sized eels still prowling the depths, it has to be a place like this. Without a hook, though, I'm in virgin territory, It feels like I've been disarmed.
It's still in the mouth, it's still in its mouth. Look at that, just came out. Oh. Come here. There we go. My first fish on a bob. The technique actually works, and it works for two reasons. A bit of role reversal here. Normally it's me providing the hook. This eel has got hundreds of little hooks in its mouth in the form of teeth, and that's why it catches onto that bob. It sort of hooks in, but the other thing is it's a predator, and so it thinks that bait is getting away, so it hangs on, and then if I'm quick about it, it's up on the bank before it actually knows what's going on. Okay. Oh, it's all right, I'm putting you back. No need to struggle, I'm actually putting you back. Lovely, I've just caught a fish without using a hook. It absolutely works.
Spurred on by my success, I push further into even wilder backwaters, to places where few people ever fish. The eels here are as bold and as willing to strike as any I've seen. And with my bobbing skills improving fast, I'm soon dragging them out at up to 4 feet long. But I'm looking for a beast twice this size, and time is running out. If the animal described by Captain Cook really was an eel, then seemingly the big ones are very rare, or even, perhaps, a thing of the past. So far, the monster I've come in search of has eluded me. But I still have some unfinished business with the longfin eel that may yet help me solve the mystery.
Just in my short time here, I've been hearing a lot about their aggression. I'm in no doubt that I'm dealing with a very powerful and large animal. There were those sheep dragged into the water and eaten alive, and that was actually from somebody who saw that happening. As for humans, we have a swimmer who was swimming without clothes, who had his private parts mauled, and then there was the diver having his ribs actually cracked. And then finally that newspaper report of a girl being dragged into the water. But I have to admit there is still a grain of doubt in my mind. To be totally convinced, I need to see the proof for myself. And there's only one way that I can do that.
My destination is a remote river in the heart of a primeval wilderness. I want to find out if wild longfin eels, large or small, are willing to attack a healthy adult human. I've already been in the water with these animals, in a zoo. This time, it's going to be very different. The place I've chosen is swarming with eels, and because they're wild, they'll be hungry. The question is, will they be bold enough to have a crack at me? To draw them in, I first soak my clothes with fish guts. Put simply, I'm turning myself into human bait. I feel my heart starting to pound. I've done some crazy things in my time.
getting into a pool with piranhas, going into murky water after snakeheads, but this has to be one of the scariest things I've done.
For protection, I'm wearing chainmail gloves and a thick wetsuit, and I'll be sticking close to the bank. Within minutes, eels start to emerge from their hiding holes.
That is just so snake-like, coming out of the water with its mouth like that. I'm hoping they're going for my hands, but they seem to be interested in other parts of my clothing at the moment, which is a bit disconcerting. And even if I move my legs, I move my hands, it's not really sending them away at all. They're coming right in close. The thing about these fish, these are not fish that people feed, these are wild fish, so they are hungry. They're bumping my legs, they're tugging at my shirt, and they're coming in on my fingers as well. I'm actually wearing gloves, these are Kevlar gloves, and I wouldn't be too happy doing it without those. Ah! No, I do want to hold my ground. I mean, I've come this far. I don't want to get out too quickly.
It's broad daylight, and from their point of view, I'm a big animal. But they're totally unfazed.
Get out! Ow! I think I need Kevlar underpants as well. Most fish would not do this at all, even piranhas. Ow! That was inside of the thigh, inside of the thigh. What I don't want is for them to draw blood. If they draw blood, that could really get them going. Ah! Ah! That is one aggressive fish. Ah! Look at that! 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 Ah! I think it's time for me to get out. Get out! Get out!
I came here wondering if the monster described so long ago by Captain Cook was, in fact, a giant eel. Short of seeing an 8-footer, I can't be sure. Yet it's clear to me that without protective clothing, these eels would have ripped into my flesh and tried to eat me alive. And with this animal, it isn't just about size. Slip and fall over in some lonely river, and it's the hungry pack that could seal your fate.
It might come up, it might come up. Coming towards the surface. That's the tail, that's the fish. Dorsal and tail, dorsal and tail. First time it's broken the surface.